And I'll just sit. Oh. Oh my.
Are you guys still there?
Yep.
I'm here. I'm here.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yep. You ready?
I'm ready.
Yeah.
Okay.
You guys still there?
Yeah, here
I'm
we go.
here.
Here we go.
I don't hear any music.
Yeah, I haven't started yet, so. Dang it. Here we go. Welcome to the Health Detective Podcast with Roberto Parker. Join strength and conditioning expert Roberto Parker as he shares his over 35 years of experience in training athletes and helping people achieve their fitness goals. Now here's your moderator, Chris Whiting, with Coach Roberto.
Hey, everyone. Welcome once again. It is that time every other Monday where we sit down and talk a little bit about something that's important to all of us, which is our health. Now, this episode, even more so than some of our others, is going to be a literal shit show. So buckle in, folks. We're going to talk about leaky gut and loose stools. So grab yourself a plate of food, sit down, and let's jump into this. Roberto, what's happening, buddy?
Well, you said loose stools. It's going to be loose stools, my man.
Oh, loose stools. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I get all those loose things mixed up. Loose schools, loose lips, you know, all that stuff. So
Oh, yeah.
this is,
Understandable, Chris.
most people don't want to talk about poo, and I get
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But your contention, I assume, is that it's a really important indicator of our health.
Absolutely. I mean, what do veterinarians use with horses and dogs and sheep and cows? You look at their poop to see how healthy they are, to try to detect what's going on with them in terms of disease or sickness, because that is a major indicator. Now, I don't know of too many doctors, medical doctors that do this with patients, but I do know that there are stool tests that you can do out there, which is a good indicator of the microbiome health, if there's any bad bacteria, how much good bacteria is in your gut, because that's really the only close to accurate method of measuring it is by looking at your poop and evaluating your poop. So, and there is, I have as part of my program here, I have stool test kits where you can wipe your urine, send it into the lab, and they send me back the results, and I can take a look at what type of bacteria is in your gut, because bacteria is everything to the body. I mean, we are just a community of bacterial and viral stuff. That's what we are as human beings. So when those things are not working like they should be, it can cause some pretty severe stuff. And I know we kind of laugh about poop, but 80% of the industrialized population in the world have a problem with their gut lining, and that can lead to a lot of major complications with your health, and it could even be life-threatening down the road.
Wow. Now, I don't want to take us too far down this rabbit hole, but the test that you have, is it really as simple as wiping your beehole and sending it in?
That's it. You
Okay.
just like you swab your nose for the COVID test, you just swab your backside and send it in.
Wow. Okay. because I know years ago, long time, my grandfather had to have his poop tested for something, but he had to like actually, dig down in.
Yeah.
I just remember him saying the floaters were okay, but the sinkers were kind of an issue. So it's good to know that it's as easy as just swabbing yourself, which I
Right.
do for fun anyway. Yeah. Um, so what kinds of things can you learn from somebody's scat?
Well, let's take it like this. What I want to start from the beginning. What causes leaky gut? Okay.
Oh, okay.
Leaky gut is what usually leads to things like diarrhea or constipation. Leaky gut is caused by a lot of problems like, well, let me just start with this. All of our guts are semi-permeable. I sent you guys a chart. I don't know if we can pull that up or not. All guts are semi-permeable. You see my hands right now?
Uh-huh.
There's just a little bit of spacing in between my fingers interlocking here. So this represents the cell lining of your gut. So with a leaky gut, by stress, by food allergies, by prescription drugs, by toxic chemicals, those fingers start to uninterlock. So now there's more of a gap in there. You see that?
I
And
do.
so when you eat food, food has to be digested and broken down into small particles and then sent down the way to the large intestine to be pooped. And also because the nutrients from those small particles have to be utilized in your body for carbs, fats, proteins, and other nutritional products.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is when those food particles are not properly broken down like they should, it puts strain on the cell lining of your gut, and it adds stress to it, and that lining becomes wider and wider. There's that chart. That lining becomes wider and wider apart, and those particles get down into the bloodstream. And when those particles become undigested, get into the bloodstream, the immune system kicks in and says, okay, we got some foreign invaders here. It is time to send out the troops. That causes autoimmune disorders.
So leaky gut, and I don't think I've ever understood this, Roberto. That was a great description. I always thought of leaky gut like the Olestra, like when they made those fat-free fake fat potato chips that made you have anal leakage. Leaky gut isn't greasy leakage outside it's leaking into your body then, if I'm following correctly.
Well, I mean, it can lead to mucus in your stool. I mean, if you look at the chart that Paul just pulled up here, I don't know if I can make this bigger or not. Now, this is a chart
That's
more.
What she said. Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
Let's see if Paul can work his magic here.
At the upper top left, that is a brown, which is how your stuff should look.
Mm-hmm.
Now, as you transition over to the right there, I believe it's red, yellow, green. That is an indicator of some bile, some liver problems. And now getting back to where does it leak to? Yeah, well, it leaks out of your butthole. Yeah, it'll come out of your butthole. But
okay.
The point is leaky gut means that food is not being digested properly. You've heard of the term diffusion. We all learned that in high school biology, right? Diffusion.
Yeah.
Okay. When food particles are broken down properly, they diffuse into the cell lining, and they're broken down and they're used to nourish the body. When those pieces of food are not broken down like they should, if you look to the far right on this chart, that is an indicator of spacing in between the cell lining of the gut there. And that will get down into your bloodstream. I guess it leaks into your bloodstream also. It gets down into the bloodstream. And when it gets into the bloodstream, undigested and non-diffused, that's when the immune system kicks in and says, okay, let's send out the troops. We got to attack this enemy in us. And that causes autoimmune disorders.
So you're getting it on both fronts then if this happens, because you're not absorbing the nutrients like you should. but
No,
then you're also inviting potentially autoimmune disorders to come into play.
absolutely. Look, the cell lining of your stomach and your small intestines, like any other cell in your body. What happens also is with the lining of your stomach, you have little villi. I don't know if you guys can see my cursor, you probably can't. There's a little villi that sit on top of those little cylindrical objects there.
Yeah.
And when those villi, when food come in contact with the villi, they're broken down and diffused into the tissues of the body. Well, with a leaky gut, and when you're eating foods that your body doesn't like, that you're allergic to, or that you're sensitive to, that villi becomes more and more blunted. Plus, the spacing in between those cells becomes wider and wider and wider and wider, and foods don't get broken down like they should, which causes inflammation.
Oh boy. And those of us that listen to this program a lot, and I do because I happen to be on it, know that inflammation is sort of the mother of all kinds of health problems.
Absolutely. And so when inflammation kicks in, you got all kinds of issues. Right now we're living in this COVID thing still. And what do you hear a lot about? Cytokine storms. Well, when there's chronic inflammation, guess what happens? You create a cytokine storm within the body.
Wow.
And that can lead, by the way, that can lead to things like Parkinson's, because a leaky gut is basically an infection of your stomach, is what it is. Okay.
Wow.
And so what's going to happen also, that infection, some of those little critters can climb up the vagus nerve, because the vagus nerve runs from the small intestine up to the brainstem, can run up crawl up the brainstem. It can affect cognition, lightheadedness, Parkinson's. It can affect thyroid. Your thyroid is right here in your throat area. It can affect the thyroid. It can lead to long-term complications like dermatitis of the skin. It can lead to neuropathy. It can lead to myopathy, which is problems with your muscles. It can lead to joint issues, and heaven forbid, can also lead to things like cancer. Now, initially, some of the leaky gut symptoms are going to be things like bloating, diarrhea, constipation. You kind of semi laugh that off a little bit, and it's probably going to be like that for a few months. But eventually, if the problem is not taken care of, it can lead to ulcers, and that can lead to things like stomach cancer, colorectal cancer.
Good Lord.
Because of that inflammation going on, and because of cell deterioration, because of the cytokine storm.
Gotcha. Now, it's probably self-evident, but let's be honest, everybody looks in the toilet when they're done. Okay.
Absolutely.
So
I do.
what? Yes. Yeah. Okay. I do it too. All right.
Because I always evaluate my poop.
See, I don't always evaluate. I sometimes admire and I sometimes admonish, but I always look. So what should people be looking for? I think you alluded to it a little bit earlier, but what should they see?
All right, Paul, pull up the poop chart again if you can there. Now, your poop should be firm, should have a nice, semi-nice shape to it. It should not be loose. It should not be watery. It should not be full of mucus. It should be nice and firm and have some texture and shape to it.
Firm, nice shape, texture, not loose. Okay. Just like my wife. Great. So we've got the chart back up here now.
Okay. Now,
and
let me say this real quick. It can get to the point where your body is so jacked up in terms of you not breaking down food like shit. And by the way, HCl, which is stomach acid, has a lot to do with this also, because as you age, we lose some of stomach acid. And with a lot more stress in life, you lose stomach acid. So that's part of the problem, because you're not breaking down food like you should. But what can happen is food starts going through your gut and never really gets digested. So if you look in the toilet and you see things like broccoli and corn and peanuts and cashews that are still in its natural form, you've got some major digestive problems.
And especially if you didn't eat any of those things. I'm here all week, folks.
Okay, Chris.
Sorry. I didn't mean to derail. So if you see the food that you've eaten still recognizable in a solid form, you got some issues going on.
Big time issues. Go see a doctor immediately.
Gotcha. So seeing food down there is an issue. Just looking at this chart, I'm guessing you don't want the watery, the loose, the hard, or the strong smelling stuff.
You want it firm. You want it well shaped. Now, I heard this several years ago in doing research on this topic. It should be at least 6 inches or more per day.
I've heard that before. Oh, poop. Yes, sorry.
Are we talking about the same topic here,
yeah,
Chris?
Sorry. So 6 inches or more per day?
Per day.
Okay, dumb question, but is that a cumulative thing? Like if it's broken or something, do you say, okay, I got 4 inches there, 3 inches there, I'm good?
Preferably one nice big one. But if it's got to be 2-3 inches or something like that, I guess that's not as good in my professional opinion. It should be nice. It should be nice, one big solid one. Now, there are some practitioners you might listen to who will say that you should poop 3-4 times a day every time you eat a meal. I don't necessarily agree with that. It depends on the type of food that you're eating. Now, a few months ago, we talked about plant-based versus animal-based, if you recall that podcast. Keep in mind, there are type of foods that can irritate and perpetuate leaky gut, and those foods are gluten, which is plant-based, by the way. Things like phytates, lectins, oxalates. Now, all of those are enzyme inhibitors, endocrine disruptors, and typically are found in plant-based foods.
Ah, wow. Okay? It all connects.
Yes. So if you're eating a lot of nuts, remember we talked about this before. If you don't soak the nuts, if you don't soak the grains of whatever you're going to make, say you're going to bake some bread or something, if you don't soak the grains of bread that you're about to bake or something, that can lead to a lot of irritation in the intestinal lining. And now, when you're younger, you can get away with things more because you have a lot more acid in your stomach to help break things down. But as you age, you naturally start to lose some HCl, which is hydrochloric acid. There's enough acid in most human beings' stomach when they're in prime condition, prime health, enough acid to melt a nail.
Holy cow.
Now, that's why you have mucus around your stomach, because when that mucosal lining becomes compromised, you get a leakage of acid outside the mucosal lining, and that leads to things like ulcers. So if that mucosal lining is intact, you shouldn't have any problems from that perspective. But if you start to lose stomach acid, you don't break foods down as well. So guess what? Now there's more potential for leaky gut and loose stools. So if your stools are always loose and watery, there's something going on with probably your eating. Now, it could also be caused by emotional stress too. So if you're going through a lot of emotional stuff in your life, that can also cause leaky gut. Because stress is the big thing. If you're going, if you expose a lot of chemicals or something like that, that can cause issues also. But the biggest issue in our American industrialized society and world is the way we eat food. It's gluten is probably the worst. I'm not going to say a lot of animal-based unless it's processed, but a lot of processed, I will say it, processed foods are the biggest culprit. Prescription drugs is another one. If you're taking a lot of prescribed medication, it can have effects because some prescribed medication actually has some gluten type substances in the first place. So prescribed medication, okay? So those types of things can lead to leaky gut and bad stools. If you're always constipated, something is wrong. If you always got diarrhea, something is wrong. Now, once in a while, we all get diarrhea. Let's admit it. Okay.
All right. Okay. I'll come
Okay.
clean. It
All right.
happens.
It happens. Now, if it's chronic all the time, if you're constipated all the time, then there's something going on. I would say, first of all, go see a medical doctor.
Mm-hmm.
And once you talk to a medical doctor, come see someone like myself. I'm not a doctor, but I can evaluate where the stress levels are coming from, and we can possibly eliminate or mitigate, reduce the amount of stress that's causing the problem in the first place. It could be your diet. It could be maybe you're exercising too much. It could be you're not exercising enough. It could be some sort of chemical. It could be something you're putting on your body like lotions or hairsprays, something along those lines. You'd be surprised. The stuff that you put on and in your body always goes to that intestinal mucosal lining. The mucosal lining in your body runs from your eyeballs all the way down to your anus.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That entire area has a mucosal lining. When that mucosal lining becomes compromised, that leads to a lot of complications, and it usually starts in the gut. I said this probably 3 years ago when we started doing these podcasts. For every message that the brain sends to the gut sends 9 or 8 messages back to the brain.
Yeah, and we've talked, it's almost a second brain, right?
Yeah, so when the gut is not healthy, that affects cognition, it affects recall, it can lead to dementia, it can lead to things like autism, all because of the type of food you're eating. In fact, I'll make this statement right now. I'd say that 80 to 90% of diseases we have is mainly because of our eating habits.
Wow.
Okay.
That's a bold statement, but I'm sure it's true.
It is true. It is true. I mean, that's just the bottom line. If people were to clean up their eating and eat foods that are relative to their metabolic type, and you might think you're eating healthy. You might think, okay, I'm just going to eat salads every day and just fish every day. But what if you're sensitive to green lettuce or green spinach? Once again, plant-based, phytates, lectins, oxalates, which are enzyme inhibitors and endocrine disruptors, which can also affect the health of your gut.
Yeah.
What if you're eating nuts every day? Well, I'm just going to eat raw cashews. Well, I got news for you. Some people can't eat raw cashews because it makes them shit all the time. Okay. So it's not going to work that way, folks. You've got to be more dialed in and find the type of foods that agree with you and that do not agree with you. And finding a professional trainer who can help you do that will eliminate a lot of the potential issues that we're talking about tonight: loose stools and leaky gut.
You know, I love that. I love something else you said earlier too, Roberto. Like if you're seeing a lot of food in the toilet or blood, you know, get to a doctor. We're not giving medical advice here.
Absolutely not.
But we're giving information on health. And that's something, you know, you mentioned, go find a trainer, go find somebody that can get the testing done for you, can see what your metabolic type is and help you on a lifestyle to really maximizing what you can do based on your metabolic type and adhering to dietary guidelines that match it.
Right.
You just happen to be, if I'm not mistaken, one of those trainers that can help people with that type of thing.
I do holistic. I'm not gonna. Well, I guess I'm a holistic practitioner. I just don't train people and watch them lift weights and do cardio and do interval training. I look at their diet. I look at their lab results. I've been certified to evaluate blood labs, urine labs, saliva labs, and stool labs.
Oh,
so
nice.
I look at their lab results. That tells me a lot. I look at their lifestyle, and we come up with a plan based on that.
Nice.
There's also a test that you can run called a food sensitivity test. And what that does, it will measure going from point A to point B to point C to point D, how your body tolerates certain foods. Are you reactive to certain foods? Now it's color coded. When you get the results, you'll have certain foods that are in red that you should totally avoid. It'll have foods that are in green, which you can eat frequently. It'll have foods that are yellow that caution, eat frequently, but more infrequently. So there are certain foods that your body may agree with that your body does not agree with. Some people can handle more gluten than others. Some people can handle more plant-based than others. Some people can drink milk and it doesn't affect them. Some people cannot drink milk. Some people I can eat beef every day. I could have a steak for dinner every day. Wouldn't bother me a bit. Now, some people can't do that. Maybe even psychologically they can't do that. But I could have ribeye steak or a T-bone steak or hot roast every day for dinner. It wouldn't bother me a single bit. But some people just cannot do that.
Yeah, I think I could do that.
You've got to find out what is going to work best for you. And the only way to do that is find yourself an integrative, holistic practitioner like myself who can run a series of labs, a series of questionnaire type of evaluations. And we got to pinpoint and peel away the layers and get to the granular level of what is going on with your body. I'm not a doctor. I don't prescribe medication. I'm not going to tell you to get off cancer drugs or thyroid drugs or anything like that. But if we can at least reduce the amount of stress load on your body, possibly you might be able to get off some of those drugs.
I love it. I love it. So how do people get in touch with you if they want to do this?
My number is 816-405-7703. Email is rwpsports@yahoo.com.
So if you're hearing this, Roberto can work with you. He's in the Kansas City area, but he can do stuff online via Zoom, whatever. So reach out to Roberto, guys. Don't let your health go to shit. It's
no pun intended.
No pun intended, but we're giving you the real poop here. So seriously, reach out to Roberto. I've worked out with him. He's gone over my labs with me before, and that's why I'm the glowing picture of health that you see here right now. You might want to give him your number one more time before we sign off here, Roberto.
816-405-7703. Email is rwpsports@yahoo.com. I hope I didn't spoil anybody's dinner tonight.
Well, I'm going to go eat mine as soon as we're done here, and I'm going to pay special attention to what's on the plate because I want to see what's going to be in the bowl tomorrow morning. So, hey, thank you again, Roberta. It's always fascinating and insightful. And if it's your first time listening, it's not always this gross, just so you know, but always good stuff. So thank you for tuning in. We'll talk to you again in 2 weeks here.
Take care. God bless, guys.
All right. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Health Detective Podcast with Roberto Parker. You can contact Roberto at 816-405-7703 or by email at rwpsports@yahoo.com with any comment or question you may have. Join us next time for the Health Detective Podcast with Roberto Parker. The Health Detective Podcast with Roberto Parker has been a KCTK production, produced by Roberto Parker, Chris Whiting, and Paul Lavoda. All rights reserved. For more information and content, email us at kctkradio@gmail.com.